Milestones of adulthood. So far in this chapter, we have examined theories of lifespan development in adulthood that delineate stages. We will now look at adulthood from the perspective of the main milestones of adulthood and the complexities associated with these. As key examples of milestones of adult development, we will discuss marriage, partnership, and family, parenting, mothering and caregiving, employment and career development, lifestyle, leisure, spirituality and well-being, retirement, and the development of chronic or other illness during adulthood, and dying, death, and bereavement. Marriage, partnership, and family. Being in a close relationship with another person, either through marriage, a civil union, or cohabitation, is perhaps one of the most significant milestones of human life. With around 50% of the adult population currently married, and certainly many more in other forms of close and lasting relationships, and a variety of health and legal implications for those who are married or not, it is certainly an important topic for health professionals. Marriage and civil unions are also currently a highly politically charged topic worldwide. Although some countries have now legalized civil unions, that is, a legally recognized relationship between people of either the same or opposite sex, same-sex relationships are not nationally legally recognized in many countries, including Australia, although civil unions are recognized in some states. In New Zealand, the Civil Union Act 2004 came into effect in 2005. Even so, in Australia, in 2009 and 2010, there were 23,000 documented same-sex couple families. With the huge religious and cultural diversity of Australia, mate selection, marriage, partnership, and family are correspondingly diverse. We might think that differences in marriage fall into distinct categories of love marriages or arranged marriages, or we may have our own idea about what it is that makes up a family. These ideas are strongly influenced by our family, the media, and other social influences. A family, according to the ABS, is two or more people, one of whom is at least 15 years of age, who are related by blood, marriage, registered or de facto, adoption, step of fostering, and who are usually resident in the same household. This definition is a very Western conception and revolves around the concept of nuclear family. In that definition, for example, family who do not live in the same household are not considered to be part of that family unit. The ABS also identifies couple families with and without children, one-parent families, step families, and blended families, but these two are basically variation on nuclear family conceptions. However, how families are conceptualized can differ quite drastically in different cultural groups. For example, for some, the family would not exclude those who are not usually resident in the same household. And the relevance of household may have different meanings for different people and groups. For some people, companion animals are very much considered to be part of the family, though they would not be included in official records or documentation. Marriage is generally considered to be a permanent and legally recognized arrangement between two people that includes both a sexual and an economic relationship with mutual rights and obligations. An endogamous marriage is one where the bride and groom are from the same group, like Italians marrying other Italians or Jewish people marrying other Jewish people. And an exogamous marriage is one in which the partners are from different groups. like a Catholic marrying a Muslim, or someone from Iraq marrying someone from France. For example, for some Australian Aboriginal groups, it is important to marry outside of one's kin group, and to marry someone from certain other kin groups only. While only monogamous marriages are legal in Australia and New Zealand, that is, only have one husband or wife, it is perhaps useful to know that this is not the case in all countries around the world. And with increasing migration from non-Western countries, health professionals should be aware of other types of marriage arrangements. For example, polygamy, or marriage to multiple spouses, is desirable in many Islamic countries and communities, where it is acceptable and even expected for men to have up to 4 wives, also called polygyny. But this arrangement is illegal in Australia. Less common are polyandrous marriages, where a woman has more than one husband at the same time. Perhaps more common in Australia and New Zealand is serial monogamy, or successive marriages that may be short or long term. There are also various notions of relatives that are important for health professionals to recognize. For example, consanguineal kin are people who are related by blood, ancestry, or descent, and affinal kin are people who are related by marriage. In-laws and their relatives are therefore affinal kin. Adopted kin are family created through adoption, and fictive kin are those who you might consider to be related to you, like calling your best friend your sister or a family friend your aunt. Figures 3.3 and 3.4 illustrate only 2 of the many ways that relationships in a family can be construed. Figures 3.3 shows the Euro-kinship pattern, while figure 3.4 illustrates the Dravidian kinship pattern. The Euro-kinship pattern is common in Western groups, while the Dravidian system is found in South India and in some Aboriginal and Oceanic groups. These are only 2 kinship patterns, and there are a number of other ways in which relationships between blood and marriage can be understood. However, in Australia and New Zealand, perhaps the Dravidian and the Euro patterns are most common. In Euro kinship, siblings are called brothers and sisters, and offspring from the brothers and sisters of one's mother and father are called cousins. The brothers and sisters of one's mother and father are not distinguished and are referred to as aunts or uncles based on gender. Similarly, the parents of one's parents are referred to as grandmother or grandfather, again, depending on gender. In Dravidian kinship, on the other hand, a person can have multiple mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers who are outside the immediate family unit. For example, a sister of one's mother is also called mother, and the daughter or son of that mother is called a brother or sister. In terms of parenting, discussed next, this kinship pattern can be very useful. For example, if a teenage boy, whose biological father is not available, is getting into trouble, then another father may be called upon to offer guidance. In terms of healthcare, a mother's sister may take children to healthcare appointments in her role as another mother. Another characteristic in Aboriginal kinship systems is avoidance relationships, in which the avoidance of or not interacting with certain relatives out of respect. For example, a man and his mother-in-law constitute an avoidance relationship. Critical thinking. Is development in adulthood related to chronological age or to life experiences, or is it related to both? Take as your examples a 60-year-old with small children and a 40-year-old with teenagers. How can an understanding of different kinship patterns influence healthcare practice? Overall, the number of marriages per year and the marriage rate has decreased over time. Age at marriage has been steadily increasing, and living together before getting married, that is, cohabitating, is now a very common practice. Marriage is an important consideration of health professionals because of the research showing various relationships between marriage or being single and health. For example, people who are married have a longer life expectancy. Marriage reduces the risk of an earlier death, as a person is less likely to participate in risky behavior and more likely to nurture or guardian each other's health through promoting good diet and physical care. A large study in the United States by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, found that married people were overall expecting body weight healthier than people who were not married. This research also showed that marriage benefits the health of men more so than women. This better health includes being less likely to suffer various conditions such as headaches or back pain, as well as healthier lifestyle factors such as not smoking, not drinking alcohol, or not being physically inactive. Married men, however, were more likely to be overweight, which might lend some credibility to the old saying that the best way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Interestingly, the patterns did not hold for people who were living together but not married. Their health was similar to the poorer health reported by divorced or separated adults. Divorce and family breakdown. Like marriage, partnership, and having a family, divorce and family breakdown are major milestones in adult development when they occur, and can have both positive and negative consequences. These effects depend on the social context and consequences of divorce or family breakdown. For example, divorce with children involved can be very complicated, but the outcomes largely depend on how these complications are managed. While there is a large body of research showing negative health consequences of divorce, staying in violent marriages or in highly dysfunctional relationships may be more harmful. Whether those involved marry again is another consideration in the interpretation of the health consequences of divorce. When working in healthcare with people who have divorced or separated from long-term partners, or children of parents who have divorced, it is important to get a full contextual picture of the family situation before making assumptions about the health and social effects. Parenting, caregiving, and reconceptualizing children. Data indicate that the average Australian family includes roughly 1.7 children who are, on average, 18 months different in age. The mother would have been about 30 years old when she had her first child, and chances are the couple will have divorced after 12 years of marriage. While this can contribute to a static and narrow view of families in Australia and New Zealand, the reality is that family composition, parenting, and divorce are highly diverse and change drastically over time. Take, for example, sole parent households, blended families, teenage parents, same-sex parents, fostering, adoption, and grandparents taking responsibility for bringing up their grandchildren. Becoming a parent or the caregiver of children is a major milestone of adulthood, challenging identity and social roles. In fact, being the parent or carer of children changes almost everything a person does or can do. As discussed in Chapter 2, parenting is an important contributor to children's development, but it is highly complex and diverse. One of the complexities of parenting relates to the different ways of parenting or interacting with children. Most research has been conducted in Western countries, with corresponding biases in terms of what is considered to be good parenting, as well as how parenting styles are represented. For example, as discussed in Chapter 2, one popular version of parenting includes 4 dimensions: authoritative, indulgent, neglectful, and authoritarian. Although authoritative parenting is generally considered a preferable parenting style in the Western context, there are communities and contexts in which this parenting style would be considered inappropriate. Consider a context in which the environment is socially or physically dangerous, such as a socially and an economically depressed locale with high rates of violence. In this context, authoritative parenting might not be beneficial, and authoritarian parenting might have better health and social outcomes for children. Similarly, in a context in which being educated is the most important and useful goal, and the environment is less risky, then authoritative or even indulgent parenting may be preferable. Another issue related to parenting style is the way a society or parents view children. In some contexts, children are viewed as an economic resource for parents because they can gain employment and bring money into the household, or they can work around the house and thereby relieve the parents for employment purposes, or they will marry into another family and attract wealth. In some contexts, baby may be considered dispensable in poverty conditions or other problematic conditions. In contexts with greater social and economic stability, such as in the West, children may be viewed more idealistically and seen as people in themselves rather than as resources for the family. Dharmalingam, 1996, studied family size preference in a small village in southern India, where there were two major industries, a brickwork and a beedi factory. Beedis are a type of cigarette. Children could begin employment at the age of 5 years. Dharmalingam found several interesting things. First, villagers who were more economically disadvantaged reported wanting more children than those who were better off. About 50% of those who wanted more children reported wanting as many as possible, or as many as God gave them. For a Western perspective, this seems irrational, because those with less money and fewer resources should want fewer children. However, the social logic is quite clear, where children are considered as resources. Those who are economically more disadvantaged have greater benefits with more children because they attract more resources than what they use. However, when Dharmalingam asked the villagers about their reasons for having boys or girls, direct economic reasons were usually ranked third, but the major reasons for having boys were so that they could inherit the property, provide security against risk, and provide for the parents in their old age. All of these are to do with economic resources. Importantly, when children are considered as resource, parenting patterns will be very different from when children are not seen in that way. Advising people in different social and economic contexts to reduce the number of children they have because of the problems associated with the increasing world population, while good intention may inadvertently result in compromising their standard of living and social economic resources. The values that are derived in one social and economic context can be harmful when applied in a different context. In greater socially and economically advantaged contexts, having fewer children has greater advantages and benefits, especially in relation to education and the cost of education, particularly in many Western contexts. Having fewer children provides for a greater share of the resources because of the way that resources are allocated or structured in Western societies. Therefore, having fewer children and educating them better has the same social logic spelled out by Dharmalingam's participants, but build upon the particular social and economic context. Health professionals are often in the position to observe family dynamics and interaction between caregivers and children, and it is important to recognize and not be critical of dynamics that may seem unusual or different from one's own way of doing things. Family relationships and how children are viewed within the family depends heavily on the context, milieu, on culture, in which people have been raised, and it is these factors that may not be easily accessible to health professionals. Case study: Jane. Jane is a community health worker who conducts education sessions for a group of elderly refugee women from East Africa. Before starting the education sessions, Jane found out that life expectancy for the countries where the women are from is less than 50 years, and that, roughly, there is only one health professional for every 100,000 people. Jane also knows that all of the women are Muslim, and that she might need to be sensitive to issues of modesty. Jane organizes a session about breast and cervical cancer screening. On the night of the session, when Jane introduces the speaker and the topic, many of the women say they do not get cancer in Africa, and that it is a Western disease. Classroom activity. In small groups, discuss considering what Jane knows about healthcare and life expectancy in East Africa. How might she approach discussing the issue of cancer screening with the woman? How might an understanding of human development be influenced by differences in life expectancy for different population groups, or for migrants or refugees from countries with very different life expectancies from the new country of residence? Parenting and attachment theory. With an increasing diversity of family composition and parenting roles, particularly in developed Western countries, there has been greater attention to the role of mothering in society and in families. Early theorists, such as John Bowlby, emphasized that mothers are of crucial importance to children, and developed his original attachment theory primarily based on clinical observations and monkeys raised without their mothers. He believed, and the ethos at the time agreed wholeheartedly, that mothers are of special importance to raising healthy and happy children as the primary caregiver, and described this bond as of lasting psychological connectedness between human beings. While the early attachment of children to parents and others is not disputed and has had a revival of late, attachment no longer refers solely to mothers and their children. Depending on how mothering is defined, it may or may not involve only women as mothers. Consider, for example, Arundel's definition of a mother as someone who does the relational, logistical work of child rearing. This work can be done by man or woman. For example, currently in Sweden, men can be considered to be mothering under some conditions of work practice and have time off work. However, others have argued that the role of motherhood is unique for women and that men cannot fully be mothers. Riggs and Dew discuss the complexities in relation to gay male parents and surrogacy in India, arguing for greater recognition of issues of gender as well as power and privilege, and how that intersects with role of mothering and caretaking. In terms of considerations for health professionals, again, the diversity of parenting roles and relationships cannot be underestimated. How health professionals manage diversity in practice can significantly impact on healthcare and health outcomes. Adoption or fostering. Adoption or fostering of children provides another interesting example of the diversity of family dynamics and the role of children within families. Often, in Western countries, a child might be homed through adoption or fostering because the mother or parents cannot look after her or him. This may be because of poverty, drug habits, violence, neglect, death, or illness. And so a child might be taken as a ward of the state or country. In many circumstances, an opportunity is first provided to other family members, such as grandparents, aunts, or uncle, to look after the child. In many cases, this is not possible, so people who are completely unrelated biologically may adopt or foster and raise the child. These adoptive parents are also becoming increasingly diverse in their circumstances. For example, consider that with greater recognition of same-sex partnerships, that these couples may opt for fostering or adoption as a way to raise children. While there are some lay views that these non-traditional parenting arrangements are problematic, a recent study on adoption by gay or lesbian couples found very few differences to heterosexual couples who raised adopted children. However, in many non-Western countries and in many communities within Western countries, forms of adoption and fostering are and have always been a common event. Children may be raised by kin with full knowledge of their origin, with no problematic situations and within very healthy contexts. This is common, for example, in both traditional and contemporary Maori social relations. For example, a woman might ask her sister if she would raise one of her children, and this can be arranged even before the child is born. This arrangement can be viewed as an ultimate gift from sister to sister. These arrangements can be made for a wide range of reasons. For example, it might be that the adopting sister has had problems conceiving and therefore would like a child. In other cases, the adopting sister might already have a family but still be asked to raise a child, maybe because of her parenting skills. This sort of adoption process can be seen as another way of facilitating and maintaining bonds and relationships between people in kin-based communities. It is important to emphasize that in some circumstances, when this kind of fostering or adoption occurs, it does not necessarily indicate that any of the people involved are having problems such as the baby being in danger of neglect, or that the family are not fully able to raise the child. Sometimes grandparents might raise children, and the grandparents might not be much older than the parents. It is unlikely, as would be the case for many Western families, that a 70-year-old grandmother would raise a newborn baby for her daughter, but a 40-year-old grandparent might easily raise a grandchild. One important element in this fostering scenario is that the context involves a kin-based community in which everyone spends time together and is close, even if conflict occurs regularly. This means that the child would know his or her biological parents and see them regularly, which is unlike how adoption was conducted until very recently in most Western systems, where the child was made anonymous and the biological parents' names were kept secret. There are numerous examples of this sort of kin adoption and fostering, and reports of this from all corners of the world, mainly where extended or kin-based families remain intact. This practice is still common among Maori in New Zealand, for example. Overall, the stage of adult life involved in parenting and child rearing is common and important. This is not just for the children involved, but also for the parents. Nevertheless, while disagreement exists between some researchers and theorists regarding exactly how this developmental phase operates in adult life, there is agreement what is considered normal adult behavior at this stage is now diverse and changing. This early life context also contributes significantly to health outcomes, the development of health and health issues, and influence the effectiveness of healthcare interventions. Healthcare services will be much more effective when health professionals are informed with even a basic understanding of these contexts and complexities of their clients. Employment and careers are obviously important to our life stages, but research shows that the nature of career development has changed over time. While parents or grandparents may have been employed in the same place for their entire adult life, many people today make substantial career changes throughout their working life. Again, while the majority of Australians and New Zealanders will finish high school and then go on either trades training or university before moving into a career, there is a substantial minority who will not navigate such a clear path to employment opportunities and career options. Employment, career, and lifestyle. Employment and careers are obviously important to our life stages, but research shows that the nature of career development has changed over time. While parents or grandparents may have been employed in the same place for their entire adult life, many people today make substantial career changes throughout their working life. Again, while the majority of Australians and New Zealanders will finish high school and then go to either trades training or university before moving into a career, there is a substantial minority who will navigate such a clear path to employment opportunities and career options. In Australia, census data show that the percentage of families with children with both parents employed has gradually increased to 63% in 2009-2010, while the percentage of families with children where neither parent is employed has gradually increased from 7% in 1996 to 5.4% in 2006 and 5% in 2009 and 2010. The employment status of parents is related to the age of dependent children in the household. For example, as children get older, there is a higher proportion of parents employed. Overall, the 2009 and 2010 data show an increase in the employment of mothers, with 66% of mothers employed in couple families with dependent children, compared with only 59% in 1997. Additionally, in lone mother families with dependent children, in 2009-2010, 60% were employed, but in 1997, only 46% were employed. Although there are a number of economic benefits for families where the caregivers are employed, this also means that there are many children in homes where the only parent is working. There are many social and health effects of these arrangements, and they are not necessarily all positive. Being employed is a major aim and milestone of adulthood and has a number of health benefits. Equally, being unemployed can negatively impact on health, as can be employed in the wrong job or in poor working conditions.